Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWAG. If you're new here, we are so glad to have you. This is a weekly Zoom call that we do to inform our members of what is going on at MWAG and to keep you informed on different skills um, and provide you with different things, resources that MWAC has to offer. And today we have Meredith Gardner, who is our Director of Media Literacy, who comes on the Grow every other month or so and gives us some media literacy skills. And today we're going to be talking about recognizing propaganda and what that might look like, just in case we are not sure. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Meredith.
Thanks, Rachel. It's good to be with you today, friends. I wanted to talk to you today about recognizing propaganda because, well, for one, we posted this week about recognizing propaganda. So we're going to talk primarily about our Media Literacy Monday post. If you follow us on social media, um, every Monday we post about a media literacy topic, and it's meant to be educational and helpful. Um, and this week we kind of refreshed some old information that we had about propaganda. We've just noticed over, the last year, the level of propaganda we see, especially on social media, is really increased. And so it's just important for people to know how to recognize different propaganda techniques, so that we can all make good decisions, so we can interpret information correctly, and so we can recognize the truth. And we really believe that's an important part of our peacemaking mission. So I wanted to start out by talking about what is propaganda exactly. I think definitions are important, especially these days. Definitions get twisted, and it's important to understand what exactly propaganda is. And it's defined as the systematic decimation. If I can, let me start over. The systematic dissemination of information, especially in a biased or misleading way, in order to promote a particular cause or point of view, or often a political agenda. Um, so we see propaganda a lot. There's different propaganda techniques used in advertising a lot or in public relations. Um, but propaganda takes advantage of psychology to manipulate people into thinking or believing certain things or acting in certain ways. And it's not always necessarily negative. There's a lot of people who feel like propaganda has been used in a way to like unite populations for good or for bad in the past. But it is a distorted way of thinking. And so it is really important to understand that propaganda does not show us the truth, no matter what the outcome is. And it's just really important to recognize that. Um, some basic propaganda characteristics are exhibiting bias or oversimplifying an issue, usually to achieve a specific goal. And we're going to look at some examples of propaganda, and talk about that a little bit. A lot of times, propaganda will attack a perceived opponent. There is like this sense of good guys and enemies, oftentimes. It omits information that's necessary to form a rounded view. And a lot of times it uses slogans and symbols to tap into emotions. So you might see like an American flag or an eagle or anything else recognizable. Words like victory or freedom are often used in propaganda. And so it's, or even like religious slogans and symbols, scripture, religious music can be used in propaganda. So when you hear those things or you see those things, it should set up a little flag for you. And the frustrating part about propaganda is that it often comes from sources we feel like we should be able to trust. Um, oh yeah, I'm gonna pause, Rachel. Can everybody
I
see
just
my
wanted to
slide?
make sure, can everybody see Meredith's slides? And give me a thumbs up if you're seeing her slides.
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
Thanks for
great.
checking on that. Okay, so propaganda often comes from sources that we feel like we should be able to trust, whether that be the government or a large organization or a company that's really popular or a media personality. And that can make identifying it and understanding it confusing because sometimes it feels like, well, I should be able to trust X, Y, and Z, but yet they're trying to manipulate what I think and what I do. And that's kind of can really throw people for a loop. It can be hard to accept that sometimes our institutions do try to use manipulative tactics. Um, the U.S. government used propaganda as in operations during times of war. It's just a really common technique that's used. And we're going to talk about a few of those techniques today. One of those, a major one, is an appeal to fear and prejudice. We're seeing this a lot right now, this sense of there's this one group that's causing all of our problems. This group I don't agree with is evil. Um, Talks about like heritage. Um, that's more of a glittering generality, but appealing to fear and prejudice is really powerful and it can have a huge effect on public opinion. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in current events today, unfortunately. Also, name calling is a common technique, calling someone an extremist or a radical or linking a group or a person or an idea with a label that can be construed as negative. Um, Glittering generalities, I mentioned briefly before, uses words that have a powerful positive connotation but don't really have a concrete meaning. So some we see are like patriot or justice, or I mentioned heritage is a big one we're seeing a lot right now. Um, those are words that like are just very vague and kind of can hide the true meaning behind the message. So I've found some old propaganda posters. So this is one that's from World War I, and you can tell it uses like a lot of fear mongering, labeling, um, and just to convince people to try to enlist. I thought that was a really interesting, powerful image. And this is one from World War II. This is a Nazi propaganda poster. And I cannot remember the exact translation. I have it in my notes, but I believe it says the person behind our allies is the Jew, or the person behind the scenes is the Jew. So it's meant to provoke fear and put blame on a certain kind of person. Um, and then a third example I found, one that feels a little bit more positive, is this one from World War II about planting a victory garden. And our food is fighting. And look at this cute kid. He's wearing some kind of like military cap, and they're working hard. Um, and, you know, you're doing your patriotic duty and fueling victory by gardening. So these are just some examples. To kind of help us envision those different techniques. Some of the other techniques, bandwagon, this is a big one used in advertising, especially. Everybody's doing it, so, or most people agree. Plain folks is attempting to connect and convince an audience that an idea or a person is kind of connected to a common man. That's kind of related to what we were just seeing in this Victory Garden poster, too. A lot of these propaganda techniques overlap. A lot of times people use more than one. And then transfer is attempting to associate a person or idea with something positive or negative. It could include a public official standing near a national symbol or something like a celebrity endorsement or a political endorsement, even. And here's a couple that are commonly seen. Like cornflakes, Michael Phelps. Obviously, like what if you think about it, what does an Olympian have to do with cornflakes? I have no idea. Um, that's something celebrity endorsements really, really common in advertising. Um, but we see it in politics too. Uh, McDonald's hamburgers. This is actually an example of bandwagon because you see billions and billions served, And like, if billions and billions have been enjoying their Happy Meals and strawberry cream pies, then you should too. And so this is a super common one to look out for. And then I just have a few more left to show you. One is called card stacking. So card stacking is highlighting positive information and downplaying or ignoring the negative. So it's saying, hey, look at all these cool features of this product, or look at all these cool benefits of this idea, and not actually giving fair time to the downsides of it. Obfuscation is using language or complex jargon to confuse the audience and create uncertainty. I think that's somewhat related to like the fire hose technique, which is what we're going through a lot right now. It's just this feeling of wanting to create overwhelm or confusion. And so they can use fire hose or obfuscation to accomplish that. If there's too much information for us to consume, we're just going to stop paying attention, and we're going to miss things just by by reason that there's not enough time in the day for all of us to keep track of everything. Um, so that's a form of obfuscation too. And then straw man. Straw man is creating a distorted view of an opposing viewpoint to distract from the real debate. And so that's saying something like, um, I'm trying to think of a really good example, and I'm having a hard time. And it's like saying something. I'm gonna skip over that one because I can't think of one. I can't remember if I put a slide in about that either. But straw man is just an attempt to distract from the issue. It's kind of like right now, people are saying, well, if you care about this thing, why don't you care about that other issue? And I don't want to name a specific issue because I'm not here to debate. But yeah, that's straw man. This is an example of card stacking. This is an old cigarette ad. I don't know how many of you are old enough like me to remember these. But this cigarette ad is talking about all these wonderful things that are a benefit of smoking, and a nationwide survey, and doctors recommending it. And here's a doctor too. So there's some transfer here. There's a lot of different propaganda techniques in this poster. Um, but that's a stacking example. So I just think it's really important to remember as we're looking at the news today, as we're listening to our political leaders, other government officials, anybody we generally see on the internet, it's important to recognize that there's a lot of propaganda out there right now, both in our country and in other countries. And it's attempting to make us believe or think in a certain way that's not true. And so I hope that as you learn to recognize some of these techniques, you can be more aware of what's happening around you, especially emotionally. Like propaganda is meant to evoke a strong emotion typically. So whether that be a positive emotion, like feelings of trust, or feelings of belonging, or a negative emotion like fear or anger. It's really important to recognize those characteristics, so that you can, you know, be prepared and be able to find the truth. So, yes, Lindsay commented, I've seen this from all sides. So it's helpful to look for these tactics everywhere. Absolutely 100%. Like I mentioned earlier, it's confusing to feel like, ugh, why is this company or this group or institution using these techniques? It can be everywhere. And so it's really important to be able to recognize it. And that's all I have for you today. But I'd love to answer any questions if there are any.
Well, I do have an example of straw man if you want
Oh, thank
mine.
you. My brain was just not
And this is just
going
something
there.
that I get often,
Yeah.
kind of in the community where I live, but I think we're hearing a lot about it now that it's like if you're like if you say something to the effect of, I am for common sense gun laws. I'm going to use that as an example. And someone says, oh, so, well, you're against guns. And you're like, no, no, no. I didn't say I was against guns. I was just saying I was for common sense gun laws. That doesn't mean take weapons away. This doesn't mean um, your amendment rights to own and carry and all of that is not the same. You're just saying, I would like to see some legislation to not control, to regulate, right? Or we can use environmental as an example of if you say, I I I support environmental regulations on factories, and someone says, "Oh, so you want them to close the factories? You want
Yeah.
people to lose their jobs because you want," and you're like, "No, I just would prefer that clean air come from corporations that are putting out, you know, poor emissions or something." So those are a couple straw. That's what straw man is it's like piling on an issue that you want a part of the issue, and then they kind of blow it up and make you feel like you want nothing or too much or whatever. So
Sarah has a
propaganda
question.
is tricky. Yeah.
It really is. And Sarah said, what are the distinctions between propaganda and biased news media? So that's a really good question. So propaganda techniques um, can be used in the news media, but media bias is looking at something from a specific point of view. So obviously propaganda involves bias. Um, One thing that's important to remember is that all news has bias. Like all anything we put out into the world has bias because we all have a different perspective, right? Um, but what's important is that is whether organizations or people recognize that bias and try to mitigate it. So in in propaganda, they're purposely not trying to mitigate their bias. They're actually exploiting their bias and other people's biases. And like ideally in news media, they're trying to minimize it. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, Sarah. It's a really good question. What strategies do you suggest to counter fire hose or flooding the zone dynamic? That's a really good question because that's something I'm struggling with right now myself. Um, I think it's important to, a couple things come to mind. One is making sure that you're taking care of yourself, right? And like it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of the news that's happening. I know I have been. Um, and it's okay to take a break. So I guess that's the first and foremost thing. Um, but knowing that it's important for us to be aware of what is happening around us, I think it's a for one, it's okay to mostly focus on specific issues you care about and then to rely on other people to take care of the rest. And that's kind of one of the reasons I love MWEG is we have so many experts working in so many different areas at MWEG that I don't need to be an expert on legislation. Like our advocacy team is that for us. And so I think just by being an MWEG, that's one of the ways that you can help counter those fire hose dynamics. Um, but also using news aggregators and just kind of limiting the news that you um, consume in a way. It's really hard. I don't know. It gets really overwhelming. So, and I think it's harder now too because there's so much information and there's a lot fewer reporters and news outlets out there. So we're not getting as many perspectives on all the news because they're spread really thin. But I don't have a super great answer for that question, unfortunately. But I will say it's okay to have limits, and rely on other people or even organizations to help you. Like I know here in Texas, we consider our legislative sessions, and you probably think of this in Utah too, that way. I don't know about other states, but it's super overwhelming when the legislative sessions are happening. It's like a complete fire hose. Here in Texas, they actually only have a regular session every other year, which is a little bit insane to me considering how big Texas is. So then when they do have sessions, it's just like hundreds upon hundreds of bills, and there's no way to keep track of it. So another thing you can do is follow advocacy organizations that keep track of bills. So like here there's a lot of environmental groups, rights groups that's their job is to keep track of bills and notify people about what's happening. So I would definitely keep using MWIG and other advocacy groups for that purpose too. Okay. I appreciate being able to focus on an issue instead of all issues. Yes, I think sometimes you just have to do that, and that's totally okay. Tell me more about news aggregators. So, news aggregators, you can use either something like Apple News or Google News. Those are news aggregators. The tricky thing about those, I will say, is they do use algorithms to provide you with information that they think you want, which is kind of a double-edged sword because, like, it can create blind spots, right? But also it can be helpful. Like, if you want news on specific topics, like Google News will do that for you. So I think it's just important to be aware if you use a website like Google News that there will be blind spots. There's a site that I really like, it does cost money, called Ground News, and it actually provides you with stories that are in your blind spots. So that's one of the reasons why I like Ground News. Um, is it aggregates stories. So if there's a specific topic like um, I don't know, NATO or Venezuela, it'll pull all the like tons of stories from that topic and will list them. So you can see stories from both sides, and it even lists like um, where outlets are rated on the bias scale. And Google News kind of does that too. Another aggregator that you can use is like newsletters. Tangle's a really popular one. We have a newsletter that we aggregate every Friday and send out. And it's specifically for our advocacy areas and what we hope our members are paying attention to. And you can sign up for that on our website. If you scroll down to the bottom and click on newsletters, it'll let you sign up for the News Roundup newsletter.
And
So
I put a link to that in the chat. So if you look and see, you can subscribe to different newsletters, but specifically for the Media Literacy News Roundup, the link is there.
awesome. Yes, Kelly, Ground News on Instagram is helpful. Yeah, so if you can't afford a Ground News subscription, just following their accounts on Instagram is good. Tangle has an Instagram account. Um, Sometimes, All Sides, it has kind of a news aggregator feature on its website where it will compare headlines from right, center, left. And that can kind of help you get a broader perspective of how different politic organizations from different political positions are reporting on the same story. Um, Rachel said, I found myself relying on a couple of news outlets daily digests, but in short form. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. And Monique says, I'm a big proponent of paying for the news and listening to the Economist weekly report. I think that's excellent. And I'm a proponent of paying for the news too, just because I used to work at a newspaper. Well, not just because, but in part because. But it does cost money to run a newsroom and their businesses. And unfortunately, like the United States isn't like other countries. Some other countries do provide like government funding for news outlets. We used to provide it to the PBS and we don't anymore. And so it's really important that if we want to have journalistic institutions helping us keep an eye on our democratic institutions, then we need to be willing to pay for it. And that can look different for different people. So, yeah, I agree with that. Are there any other questions? Thanks for all these great questions today. I feel like sometime we should just have a Q&A grow, Rachel.
That
Ask
wouldn't be
me
such a
anything
bad idea.
about media literacy.
Next time, that's what we could have it be. If there are no other questions,
Patricia said she's sad because she's a big fan of PBS NewsHour. I'm a big fan of PBS NewsHour too. It's funny when people ask me for like recommendations of an unbiased news source. I recommend PBS NewsHour because it's so, I want to say it's so like moderate in the way it presents things. Like It's not meant to be flashy, and it's very even keeled. The stories are longer than what you would see on something like CNN. So I love PBS NewsHour too. Luckily, it's still around, but they do need viewer support for to stay on the air. So okay, I think that's it, Rachel.
Great. Thank you so much, Meredith. As always, we really appreciate, and I know that our members appreciate having this information. If you have enjoyed this grow and would like more media literacy skills, you can go to MWEG's YouTube channel or link. I'm not exactly what you call that. Um, we have a playlist of all of our media literacy grows together. If you're interested in other grow content, you can also go to our YouTube and see some other ones on there as well. You can also find recordings of the grow videos in MWEG Central, and so you can watch them at your leisure if you've missed some that you wanted to go back and watch. So we encourage you to do that. So we're super grateful that Meredith gives us this information and gives us skills to know what we are consuming and how to do it in a responsible and informed way. So thank you for that. We also would love to announce, and I'm going to put in the chat the link. We have opened registration for MWEG's 9th annual spring conference. If that is something that you are interested in, you can go to the link. We will be updating it with more of our speakers. We just don't have all of their information just yet to put to our website. But we do have our keynote speaker, who is Shana Taub. She is a Tony Award winning writer and producer, and she also starred in the Broadway version of Suffs the Musical. So she has great knowledge of the history of the women's suffrage movement, and she's just going to come and share with us. And we have other speakers that I cannot yet announce, but you can find them on that website if you keep checking back. But this does sell out. So if you are interested and think you want to attend, I would suggest that you take advantage of the early bird pricing that we have available. So it's a $10 discount if you register early. And if you can't make it to Utah to join the conference in person, we do have a virtual option that you can watch it in real time, stream it, and you also will have access to recordings of the sessions that you because there will be 9 sessions plus our keynote and plenary speakers, so 11 in total. Obviously, we can't be in multiple places at once, so we can go back and watch recordings of the other sessions. So if that is of interest to you, we would love to have you join us on March 21st in Orem, Utah at Utah Valley University or virtually. So that link's in there. And we hope to see you guys back here on the Grow next week. We're going to hear from our Peaceful Route Director, I believe, and talk about more about peacemaking. So we hope you'll join us. And until then, we'll say see you next time.